edition of the two-day business-to-business event, we are now looking forward to another day of exciting sessions and meaningful dialogues to ensure that trade is a force for good.
In our first plenary, we can get a closer look at innovative approaches to improve trade competitiveness. Now I would like to invite Mr. George Durango from CNBC Africa to moderate the first session and introduce our 6 speakers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We made it to day 2. So let's just keep the pace going until we wind up the next couple of hours. Yesterday we discussed broadly in regards to what exactly we should see in terms of bilateral agreements and cooperation across different parts of the world. For today we talk about innovation. At this day and age we have to understand whether we need to shift our mentality in our businesses, whether we need to re-strategize our business models to ensure that even as we talk about trade, we are as competitive as can be. No nation is lagging behind. We're seeing a lot of efforts, either financially or strategically, to try and outpace different countries. Although we're working together, every individual country has its own strategies in line. So let's get to our conversation today. The panel is Innovation for Trade Competitiveness. What we'd like to do is understand the role of an innovation ecosystem. And you hear when I introduce the panelists from the different sectors they're from. So we'd like to understand whether companies, universities, academia, the public, private sector, what role they have to play to ensure that even as we talk about competitiveness, we are able to link the dots and work together to push the agenda forward from a global perspective. So to guide us through that, on my left I have Professor Colin Grant, institutional lead from the University of Southampton with the Global Federation of Competitiveness Councils for the USA. Thank you for joining us. Next we have Ms. Indira Malwat, who's the chairperson and chief executive for the Sri Lanka Export Development Board. Next we have Mr. Gustavo Lascuren, who's the managing director for Pasaban in Spain. Next we have Professor Fu Chaolan, who's a director, Technology and Management Center for Development and a professor of technology and international development from the Oxford University. Next, we have Mr. Abdulaziz bin Nasser Al Khalifa, who's the CEO of a Qatar Development Bank. And then we have Mr. Zoltan Urban, CEO of the Exim Bank here at home in Hungary. So, the way the session will go, we'll just go through the round of questions, 1 or 2, and then we'll open the floor to you. So we'd like to create context. And when you talk about innovation, ordinarily, the number one thing that comes to mind is ICT. But there's a lot more that can be talked about when we talk about innovation. And we saw the company that won the money yesterday, coincidentally, was also an ICT company. But they've focused on innovation as a key point in a sector that has been traditionally one of the most referred to, that's the agriculture sector. But they've put in an element of innovation. So speak to us from the Global Federation of Competitiveness Councils. How wide the conversation could go, or the terms of range when we talk about an innovation ecosystem, so we don't miss the point.
Thank you very much, Shikoriti, and good morning to all of you. I'm delighted to be here in the land of Belatar and Laszlo Krasnohorkai. It's a great pleasure to be here. So perhaps just briefly about the GFCC, the organization I'm representing here today. The Global Federation of Competitiveness Councils is a network of leaders and organizations committed to driving forward innovation and competitiveness across a range of different sectors, and that's why it feels like a very good place to be for a university professor like me. The GFCC is a very broad coalition and runs a number of initiatives. I'd like to just pick out 1 or 2. One is the Global Competitiveness Academy, run in conjunction with Arizona State University, developing an initiative to create next-generation global leaders attuned to the imperatives of competitiveness. The other is the Innovation Learning Lab initiative, progressive dialogues and intense workshops aimed at sparking participants to learn about innovation, promotion policies and initiatives. And we held our first ILL in Sao Paulo in Brazil earlier this year. That's very exciting. The initiative in which I'm more closely involved, and to your point, is the University and Research Leadership Forum. The co-chairs are Alice Gast, Imperial College, and Pradeep Khosla, UC San Diego. And the mission of the University and Research Leadership Forum is to identify global trends, emerging issues, and new models in higher education and research to bring about economic transformation. So that by way of an introduction to GFCC, if I may, just a few words about the wider context and the broader definition of innovation. We live at a time of the great convergence, the famous statement by Baldwin, and also an unbundling of labor from the place of production. So that convergence means contact, and the contact means disruption, disturbance, big demographic challenges, associated pressures on public authorities and welfare systems, coupled with the emergence of new interethnic, political and other fault lines. Innovation, therefore, is about survival. And just as the world seems to be moving towards closure, technology brings openness and forces us to rethink who exactly are the agents of innovation. For the innovators are no longer the elite, but emergent. And that means creating, the onus is on us, to create systems to nurture next generation leadership. And since innovation needs translation to have impact, then we need to make coalitions like the GFCC work. We need to support networks. So I have 3 takeaways and a challenge, and I'll close there. 1, there are many actors across the wider innovation system. Build big coalitions. 2, social innovation needs to be at the table alongside frugal innovation and also slum innovation, and my university has done some work in that area. 3, and despite all the politics, mobility matters more than ever before.
Right. Thanks a lot. Just a reminder to the panelists that we will have about 2 to 3 minutes, so we'll be interjecting to make the conversation as punchy as possible. And let's get to Miss Indira. Sri Lanka, as is the same case with different economies, is working on its roadmap within the innovation or the competitiveness landscape. And we know what happened with WEDF and the conversations that stemmed from there last year. So just guide us through what you're currently enduring, or what you have to bring on the table when you have this conversation about the roadmap for your country.
Good morning, and thank you, Georgie. With reference to innovation, I think we should all take an example of, I think all of us were at the gala dinner yesterday, and we heard the world-renowned Hungarian pianist, Havasi. Now, why is he different? Why is he accepted? Is he just a pianist? No. It was his innovation in performance. I think that he has been made world-renowned. So I think that's where innovation starts. We shouldn't limit it to ICT, because lots think that innovation comes with the ICT sector. But innovation goes beyond, and I think every product sector, every service sector, if we have to reach the stars, which all of us are here aiming at, we need to be innovative. Now in Sri Lanka, as my minister said yesterday, we are trying to make trade work for all the 99% of the Sri Lankans who are in Sri Lanka, because we've had difficult times. We've had the post-war economic performance has been excellent, but we realized that we cannot go forward with just that performance. So we have to be different. And how do we become different? We need to, in order to sort of transit from a lower middle income group to an upper middle income group, we need productivity, technology, and adoption of technology to enter global value chains, to create new markets, and more than anything, create more and better jobs and contribute to the overall economic growth of the country. So in this, we realize we have lots of plus points in Sri Lanka. We are very strategically, geographically located. We are into a number of FTAs. We are deepening our FTA with India. We have a FTA with Pakistan. We are now negotiating 2 other FTAs with Singapore and China. So now, having all these FTAs, how does small, beautiful Sri Lanka enter all these markets? So we have to do something different. We have to differentiate, and we have to do something different. So the government realized that if we go the way we are, that we will stay the way we are. Sri Lanka's exports have actually halved in the last decade against GDP. And we are also international, globally also we are we have got we are not doing competitively well. So we have all realized that it is innovation and entrepreneurship that has to be brought into our products and services. Sri Lanka has had small islands of success. For example, if I say the brand Dilma Tea, now why are they different to any other tea company in the world? They have differentiated themselves. They have not just gone into normal blends. They have differentiated themselves with sourcing their tea from one single estate. So that there is, it's like the champagne. So Sri Lankan teas under Dilma has started doing that. And they have gone into innovative packaging. They have gone to innovative blends. So in any product, I think innovation is the key. Look at the apparel sector in Sri Lanka. We started from a cut and stitching operation in Sri Lanka, but now in the global market, we have come to number 6 in brands, and all that is due to the innovation.
Right. We'd like to bring up that bit when we come to the second round of questioning for specific examples. Now, for all of you who are looking, you will notice the sitting arrangement is in such a way that we have context, then we have the skills, and then we have the money at the end, because the conversation on finance is always the hardest to have after everything is done. So the money comes at the end. Let's talk about the bridge in between, and that's where Mr. Gustavo comes in. Now, the region where you're from, and Pascaban, is you have the 7th region in Europe with the most university graduates. Of course, the largest issue when we talk about innovation and competitiveness has been the skills gap, and I know Professor Chaulan will weigh in as well. So having the most university graduates doesn't necessarily mean that you have the most skilled workforce or you have the most competitive people in the area, but you might want to just break it down for us, how that experience has been for you trying to understand the linkage between education and the current workforce.
Okay, well, thanks. First of all, thanks for inviting me for being here, because it's a real pleasure for me to be here with such prestigious speakers. I'm just representing a medium-sized company in Spain, in the north of Spain. It is a small region. It is the smallest province in Spain. In fact, we are 700,000 inhabitants living there. Let me just give the SME perspective of the innovation, first of all. So I will take a bit more than 2 minutes, if you do not mind. 2.5. Well, Passaban is a family-owned company that was founded in 1928, so this means that we have a long history. We design and manufacture machinery for the converting processes of paper and board industry, such as sheeters, winders, and wrapping lines. And 25 years ago, we got involved in the banknote industry. So we have something to do with these guys also. The fact is that we always have had the need to innovate, and our main challenge is to continuously add value to our products. So this is our main challenge. And this is what we are doing. In Passaban, we understand the innovation as the ability of solving issues, the new issues and the future issues with flexibility, with limited resources always, and in a very short time period. This means that we are always looking for efficiency, even if we are talking about innovation. Of course, in the long history of Passaban, there has been lots of milestones that has represented qualitative leaps in the company. I would like to just share 3 of them with you. One, it was in the early 80s when we started exporting to Europe. We realized that the machines or the market in Europe was demanding very much electronical machines, and we were more in the mechanics. So we thought that it was a good option, or thinking on the possibilities that it could give us in the future, and also taking into account the talent that we already had in-house at that time, and taking into account that we were just, well, not me, because I wasn't there. I'm very young, even if I've got this gray hair. We decided to go and to design our own electronics, but it was because we had the needed talent in-house. In the early 90s, thanks to the hamburgers, But this is another story, and I think it is not time to talk about hamburgers in here. But thanks to the hamburgers, and also and mainly thanks to the collaboration with a Spanish public company that is the FNMT, that is the main paper mill for the banknotes, we got involved in the first banknote project 25 years ago. And finally, in 2011, when we saw that our main market, that it was China at that time, it was going to have overproduction of paper, we decided to start diversifying products in our company. So we started, as we already were in the banknote paper industry, we started developing machinery for applying security features in the banknotes. And well, this was thanks to the collaboration with other companies, other banknote mills. It was also thanks to the collaboration with the technological research centers in the area, and it was also thanks to local technical key partners. So I wanted to point out or highlight these three milestones because they were possible thanks to two main levers, or what I consider that are the main levers for the innovation. One is the talent itself, that it has to be growth, and it has to be kept. And in such a small world like this one, it is more difficult to keep the talent than to make it grow. And this is why I say, yes, we are the seventh country in Europe with the most graduates, but it doesn't mean that we have the best people.
Fantastic.
Okay?
All right. Let's just put a pause there and throw it now to Professor Chaulan. Now, you're wearing two hats, Director of the Technology and Management Center and a Professor. So you'll just very quickly just guide us through that. As a follow-up on that, on the issue on skills and churning out relevance, even when you're churning out graduates. And then also you could help us understand from the Chinese perspective, when different economies are working through a broad roadmap or trying to move in one direction, China has had multiple acquisitions, multiple international decisions in regards to innovation. So just give us perspective.
Actually, I started my career as a trader in the import and export company, the China National Machinery Import and Export Company, 30 years ago. At that time, manufacturing, especially machinery, was not the sector that China has a natural comparative advantage. So the country is really trying to promote the competitiveness in that sector. And so then when I moved to the university, start to do research, we start to look at opening up policy reforms of the system, and using various policies to promote exports, like some export credits, financing various policies. But in the end, my focus has come to innovation, and we found innovation is the most important factor to enhance the competitiveness of the countries. Not only cost competitiveness, but also quality competitiveness, and also diversity and the uniqueness, etc. So it's so important, and the university can play a very important role. Universities in the innovation ecosystem, it has a multi role in the society. First is education. Nowadays, especially nowadays, about skills, about training, universities and vocational education also play a very important role to enhance the skills. When we face the industrial revolution, technological revolution, and the challenges from robotics and artificial intelligence, some of the skills can be replaced by robots and artificial intelligence, and some of the skills, especially those creative, unrepetitive skills and those kind of jobs, cannot be replaced by machines. This is where the human beings, we have the competitive advantage, and also we need to enhance such kind of skills in our labor force, and also enhance our skills to master this new technology, emerging technology, human being to master that and direct the direction rather than being replaced. So I think skills is so important at this juncture, critical juncture, and the university should play a very important role in reforming its curriculum and reforming the ways that we provide education, and also enhance the lifelong learning ability of our students and the society. Secondly, universities has another role, which is about knowledge creation, but also I think in developing countries, a very important role I call a dual role, is to helping the industries to absorb, to assimilate, adapt, and make reverse engineer of the technology transferred to them, especially for the developing countries. The industrial sector may need a lot of help to absorb and adapt the foreign technology to the local content. Like in China in the 80s, 90s, even in the early 2000s. And also in Africa, when I went to Africa, university also play a very important role to helping the Africa firms to see how to preserve the agricultural products, to make them being able to store it for longer and being transported, to foreign countries. A lot of techniques and assistance can come from the university through university-industry linkage. So that is my first point, key point. The second point is about, although university-industry linkage is not a new topic, however, in developing countries, as I have done research in China, especially I think Africa, I think policy incentives, financial support, and the institutions and the platforms to bridge the information gap between the demand and the supplier of the knowledge actually is missing, badly needed. So I think policy support, financial support, policy incentives, and institutions to bridge the gap are very much needed for developing countries, especially the least low-income countries.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor Shaolan. Which you mentioned financial institutions, a nice segue. So the common notion is that countries in the Gulf rising, they have enough financial muscle to move through any volatility. That's the common notion now. So when we talk about innovation, it means we're either redoing something but trying to take it a notch higher, or doing something new altogether. So when we're doing something new altogether, that means we have high risk and the possibility of low return, because we can't understand how it will work out if there is no case study. So you have an unfair advantage, because whatever happens, you can easily pump in finances, or you have a cushion on that end from the Qatar Development Bank perspective. But you could help us understand either these misconceptions or the current ecosystem, when you're talking about innovation from your point of view, what you consider as financeable and what you consider as high risk, low risk.
Well, first of all, good morning, everyone. I wish it was as easy as described. Yes, we do have accessibility to financial resources, but that doesn't mean that it's as easy as that. We believe that it's building an ecosystem that has different parameters. Accessibility to information, accessibility to the right talent is a main pillar of creating an innovative ecosystem. Accessibility to markets, accessibility to funding is as important as the other two main pillars, which is accessibility to talent and accessibility to markets. You look at us as a nation, as Qatar, small nation with one of the highest income per capita. We're the largest producer of liquefied natural gas. Yes, we have huge reserves, financial reserves, but that didn't stop us from trying as much as possible to be innovative. And innovation for us is, should we do pivoting? Should we just change whatever is existing into a better service provider? Or should we do disruption within innovation? So having a disruptive technology that would change certain sectors. So investment for us and accessibility to funding has been very important in terms of creating the next generation of innovators. Qatar has been pledging 2.8 of its GDP into innovation. We've created an amazing learning and educational system within the country where we've attracted top talent globally. We've done that because we believe in the role of education, the role of research and development. We have one of the largest technology oases within the Arab region. It's called Qatar Science and Technology Park. We've done that because we believe that attracting talent with having the right infrastructure, with having the right accessibility to markets, and providing access to funding would have or would create the right mix for talent or for innovation to be created. Now the challenge is, will that be relevant to those countries or to the Arab region versus internationally? And this is where we would have to make it challenge-based. The way we're building it within our countries is we try as much as possible to answer to local challenges, answer to local paradigm shifts that we're having within our countries and how innovation could help us. Mobility is a big issue for us back there. We're trying as much as possible to come up with innovative solutions that would solve these issues. We are also present within the international scene by investing in new companies. You look at our sovereign wealth funds, the announcements are public, and you could see how we're investing in technology, and some of the neighboring countries are investing in creating new, be it new cities, be it new innovations right and left. But without building the right ecosystem, we believe that those are forthcoming. You'll have to build an ecosystem that have accessibility to funding as one of the main parameters, but accessibility to the right talent, accessibility to the right educational system, the right research infrastructure, and accessibility to markets, both local and international.
Before I throw to get a Hungarian perspective, before that, because we had the conversation yesterday regarding Hungary having a large percentage being external driven. Just let me get a follow-up from that, Mr. Al-Khalifa. Just a follow-up on that. How protective are you of your borders in terms of importing talent or funding external innovators who come in? How protective are you of your borders?
Breathe unjustified blockade in my country or post?
In your
Well, anyhow, we're very open. So as countries, you look at Qatar is one of the most open countries within that region. In order to attract talent, we have special zones within my country. Qatar Science and Technology Park is a free trading zone, so we welcome talent and we provide them accessibility to research funds in order to create new innovations.
Right, perfect. Let's get a Hungarian perspective. So you're the CEO of the Export-Import Bank, and you've had this conversation happening for a couple of years, and you're now working towards a new SME lending conversation. Now, we've talked about it when we were touching base, where you're now giving priority to innovative companies with a different credit scoring and trying to understand how exactly you can reduce the gap or the accessibility between these new ideas that are coming on board and the money that you have. Just help us understand this, and then we'll ask the follow-up.
Good morning to all of you. I was happy to hear from many of you that again the bankers are in the bullseye of everyone. But remember an old musical with the title Cabaret, and the first song, the first sentence of the first song is money makes the world go round, the world go round. So, which is true, especially in case of financing. In Hungary, yesterday you heard from our minister that the government was ready to meet the challenges, introduced a very supportive tax system, and put an extreme high challenge to the state-owned institutions like the Exim Bank as well, because our job is not simply to finance innovation, which sometimes seems to be the playing field of large companies, but our job is to finance innovative SMEs. And what we did in the last 3 years, we introduced new products. We focus on SMEs. Today, more than 80% of our clients from the SME sector, and the way we choose innovative SMEs is a very simple bankable way, since we introduced a new scoring system when innovation gets higher scores, when high value added has an extra value, and after 3 years of efforts, we can report that the loan portfolio of our bank increased by 3 times since 2014, without ruining the quality of the portfolio. Today, we have micro and small SMEs, small companies who are exporting, among others, to China. So we have a client who is investing in China in smart parking. And what we did as a bank and export credit insurance company, we focused not simply on the traditional banking products like financing, guarantee and insurance, but we entered the world of equity financing. We set up new private equity funds, 100% financed by the Exim Bank, and these equity funds focus on micro and small and medium-sized companies, especially on those companies who have export capacities. And today we have already clients who sell smart parking system to China, together with one of the largest Chinese ICT companies, ZTE. So Hungarian software is on the mobile phone of 600 million Chinese users. We export smart curtain to Iran, a small Hungarian company who started in a garage and producing carpets and curtains, today exporting smart curtain to Iran. Smart curtain means that is not simply darkening when the light is increasing, but also diminishing, reducing the effect of hotness. We also have in our portfolio small companies where more than 25% of the employees have PhD, and that company producing special blood tests, exporting to more than 60 countries. So the key answer to your question is that we focused on markets and technologies, and we focused on the SMEs, and we find the proper companies through a broad variety of products. Lending, guarantee, equity, and what is important to mention that we do not do it alone, but with the help of 28 financial institutions in Hungary who distribute our products.
Right. Let's just have that. You mentioned a figure about the people who have PhDs, and earlier on you mentioned you have 80 employees, 22 of them have PhDs. Which brings about the conversation, that's less than 30% of your employees who have received higher education. And maybe when they were studying, what is currently being financed or what is being brought to the table is nothing that they had seen in their curriculum or nothing that they had worked on in school. So where is the linkage in terms of how is the advantage, or how comparative could we work out that conversation, education versus the current trends right now? And you've already worked out the equity financing and the structured financing. So how do you work out that link?
It's a very difficult question. I have to admit, how can we find the bridge between genius, talent, and higher education? So I'll give you another example. Back in the 50s, a Hungarian professor, together with a Hungarian engineer, analyzed the chimney effect. Do you know how chimney works? Down, the air is warm, and as the air is going up and up, it becomes colder and colder. And the professor and the engineer, based upon this chimney effect, elaborated even today the most modern dry cooling system for the power plants. So if you visit countries like Syria, Iran, Turkey, Australia or even UK. And you see large chimneys at power plants. Those chimneys, those dry cooling systems has been elaborated by a Hungarian professor with PhD and by an engineer who converted the ideas of professor into reality. And today, more than 10,000 of megawatt energy produced with the help of Hungarian inventor using the old chimney effect.
Professor Chaulan, would you like to weigh in on that? We've heard from the Hungarian point of view and the fact about the percentage of the workforce having PhDs. Just give us your view on the same.
I think it's difficult to judge from the percentage of the populated workforce, who have PhD. Let's look at Germany. They have also a very good vocational education system. So we need a properly structured labor force. Some people doing research, which can, but not only doing research, but also transfer the knowledge that they created in the university to the industrial sector, to commercialize it and make them turn them into something with economic value or social value to the society and the economy. So, but also we need very skilled labor force who can master the advanced machines and technology, and also doing, assimilate the newly created knowledge in the economy, maybe from other firms, from other society, from other countries. And also we need very skilled workers, highly skilled workers trained maybe from very good vocational education, so they can produce something with high quality, high efficiency. So we need to structure the workforce very well, but knowledge transfer from university to industry is very important. It's very important to know how to do it. Like the Qatar case, there are money available, but how to do it efficiently? What China has done is China has provided a lot of programs to focus on university-industry collaboration. So there are funds available, but you need an industry collaborator or you need a university collaborator and a convincing project. So this is also in the case in the UK. Such funds are available even during financially difficult times. This is one area. Yeah.
Right. Before we open the floor to the audience, Ms. Indira, we've heard about the financing bits, of course, from three different perspectives. China, the Gulf area, Qatar, and of course, Hungary. Now, as Sri Lanka works out its roadmap, how are we working out in terms of collaborative financing? Are we working towards consolidating most of these startups into one ecosystem, individualistic approaches, equity financing? How is the portfolio currently?
Yeah, right now, just to comment on what you said, I think what is important is you have innovation, you have R&D, but actually commercializing is, I think, key, because we have found it in our country. In order to, you have research, you have them doing it very independently, not with the stakeholders. And how impactful is this research being undertaken? So in order to commercialize it, I think more than the financing part in our parts of the world, we need a lot of regulations, reforms in our environment to make it a conducive ecosystem. Because right now we don't have the necessary intellectual property policies, where if research is undertaken in a university, how do you transfer it out to the public? Because it is mainly funded by government. And in Sri Lankan context, I think more than it's not even 1% that is funded by the private sector right now. So this is why the private sector becomes extremely important. And in this new roadmap for Sri Lanka's innovation and entrepreneurship, the key is going to be the private sector, while they will have to work with the government sector and the institutions, and the funding that will be necessary will come in as equity, so that there is equal partnership and there will be, so that commercialization can be done, and of course the legal reforms will also have to be done along with it to make this possible.
Right. Would like to open the floor to the audience. I have a bit of follow-up question, but we'll ask it through the round of questioning. Let's get feedback. Let's get questions from the audience. Just ask through as we carry on. We have one question there, two questions at the back, one question in front. Please say your name and who you'd like the question to go to.
My name is Ma Keke from China, CCPIT delegation. I have two questions. The first one is, could you please define the biggest challenge or obstacle to hold back the trade competitiveness? And the second one is, could you provide us some solutions, better solutions to solve these obstacles or difficulties? Thank you.
Is there anyone you'd like the question to answer the question? Anyone?
No, anyone. Okay,
right.
Thank you.
Would you want to take that? Right. Oh, let's just get two more questions and then we'll answer all of them together. Please, sir.
Yeah, just good morning, everyone. Just a small comment and one question from the panel, especially from the Qatar gentleman. We all talk about the innovation is actually it's a must. There is no debate on that. But I feel it is equally important to talk about the innovation as well. Because innovation has a little bit of a high risk because you are starting from the scratch. Maybe it could be a science-based innovation or it could be a lot of investments coming behind. But if you have the existing products and the services, if you have a little bit of a renovation to be done, it is equally important to become a new innovative idea of the product. So it's just not that making something different is the total innovation package. So as financial people, how do you look at it in a high-tech innovation or either innovation, and also in what preference you invest your money in terms of expand the horizon of the total product basket? I mean, I'm just asking for me to understand and also the benefit of the entire spectrum. So that.
Mr. Al-Khalifa, you'll take that one. And then the two last questions for me.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I have two or three questions. My first question is addressed to the Chinese professor. You did mention reverse engineering, and I believe this is extremely important because if you want to improve on something, you need to know basically how it works. And I just wanted to see, because when we try to do this, China could do it because probably a lot more than we now, because we are told about patenting laws and the undesirability of doing reverse engineering. So how do you comment on that? The second question I have is also in terms of university education. University education is that how do we ensure that we train students to think outside the box? Because I believe we go to university, we read it, and it's like the Bible. So something has to be instilled in the training courses that would compel students to think outside the box. The third question I'd like to ask is, again, you spoke about university industry. What about the consumers? Because if you are going to innovate for the consumers, you really need to understand the needs of the consumers. How do we bring the consumers into the whole equation? Thank you.
Mr. Gustavo, you'd like to take the part about the consumers? And then, right, the final question?
Yeah, no, it's not a question. I just want to make an announcement that on last September, during the OIC summit in Kazakhstan, OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the Islamic Development Bank has approved the establishment of the first Science and Technology and Innovation Fund for the Muslims world, so that we can contribute to the bringing really science and technology into the Muslims world. And this is about established with the $500 million US. In addition to that, the ITFC is also working with universities in the UK to develop now some new products for trade financing in the area of science and technology. Thank you.
Got you noted. Right, thanks to the audience. We'll get the second round of questions. Let's just start off. There was a question that was asked about the challenge to you. Just help us with that.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the question. It's good, very good question. I think partly the challenge lies in regulatory architectures, and partly it lies in our own mentalities. So siloed thinking, I think, is the enemy of innovation. And siloed thinking can be seen in very restrictive immigration policies, for example. Restrictions on mobility, we've heard quite a lot about mobility. Because one thing is sure, innovation requires a circulatory system. So we need architectures that make that circulation happen and get out of the way.
Right. Does that answer that? Right, fantastic.
Can we add to this question a further question? Who should make the first step? As the lady raised the question, what is the largest obstacle? What is the greatest burden? So the greatest burden, to a certain extent, that who should make the first step to invest into new technology, to test the market. And in my opinion, that the first step should be taken by the state, by the respective government. What we do after the change of government in 2010, that the government intentionally decided to make the first steps. And when the first steps are successful, then the market can take it over. So when we, the Hungarian Exim Bank, finance water treatment system in Sri Lanka, in Labugama and Kalatuvawa, and Hungarian engineers are from Budapest managing the fine-tuning of the water system. With the financing came with the help of the Hungarian budget. But the next water treatment facility will be financed by market conditions. So the first steps are the crucial steps, in my opinion. And the governments, the states should make the real first steps, and then step back and let the market function.
So you've got two parts to your answer. There was a question from the gentleman at the back in regards to science-based innovation and new innovation ideas.
Sure. So I think the question was regarding how to select or what to select, and would you provide accessibility to funding with what focus. And I believe that governments have gone through a process of evolvement itself within providing the accessibility to funding for research and development. We have, and I totally agree with Her Excellency when she talked about money not being the issue. We have accessibility, or we already have many researchers that are available, but they haven't reached the stage of development and commercialization because the lack of involvement of different stakeholders, mainly private sector. And within ecosystems that you see very, very developed and very advanced in terms of commercialization of innovation, you see huge involvement of the private sector being the main driver behind innovation. For us, there always have been a reactive and a proactive approach. A reactive approach when the ecosystem parameters are all in place, where then the government would provide accessibility to funding, ensuring that this is there will be an everlasting impact and an innovation that would have solved a problem locally for those economies. A proactive approach is, for example, for us in Qatar, an area of fintech or financial technology. This is an area we're investing heavily. We're creating a hub. And I know that most of you have heard about hubs creating right and left. It's how to select a sub-sector of a hub, an area in each market where hubs could be created in terms of delivering value for innovation. For example, we're selecting Islamic technology, Islamic financial technology, and regulation technology, and InsurTech. Those three parameters for us are very important in terms of creating the right hub and the right parameters, creating the demand for the talent to be created within those three subsectors, with the right accessibility to funding, to research and development, connecting with the right hubs internationally, like Singapore, London, Stockholm, to ensure that we can provide accessibility to that talent into that subsector hub with the right demand from the private sector, be it the insurance companies, the banks that will be the buyers of that technology, or the regulation from central banks or others, in order for all the parameters to be in place for a successful innovation to be created, which could go global. And innovation, whenever it's created, it should be a global innovation. It shouldn't be something to answer only for a local challenge. That's a firm belief if we want to create an impact. And for us, this has always been the way or the roadmap that we've created for creating impactful innovation. I hope it answered the question.
There was that. Ambassador Stevens asked a question about reverse engineering to you, and also a question on training students to read outside the box, and then we'll come to you for the next one.
I think these are very good questions. Thank you for raising it. The first about reverse engineering. Yeah, I think for many developing countries and many follower firms, even in industrialized countries, reverse engineering is a very important route for organizational learning, technological learning. And however, of course, we need to recognize in some of the industries, like automobile or electrical products, reverse engineering is an effective route that you will be able to, to have a product, to do the reverse engineer, to see how it is designed, how it is organized, and try to learn how we can produce it ourselves, from some parts to the whole part, of a sophisticated product. And in this process, some firms can do that by themselves, but in many of the cases, universities can join to work together, step out of the ivory tower and work together with the industry, try to understand the transfer technology and adapt it and assimilate and build our own capability. And the second about how to train our students thinking out of the box, I think is so important. And this is also a big challenge for the Chinese society too. And this really not only a task for the university, I think we need to start from primary school. How we train our kids, how we examine them. I think it's the whole education system, from the primary school to middle school to higher education, to encourage creativity, freedom of thinking, rather than kind of taught them by instruction, by dictation, and also by remembering something. And so this whole education system needs to be reformed. And the third one, I think consumers is also a very important question. I think university-industry collaboration, in this equation, we should bring consumer into this equation. Sometimes our industry will bring the consumer's desire and the demand, and also I found trade is so important. I have done a survey in Ghana, and about 530 firms, and I asked the sources of innovative idea of the firms. The highest always relate to, I did this because of my customers' requirement. I did this because, I want to sell to the international market and our foreign customers require this, or the standards require this, or we did this together with customers. So I think it's very important, and the trade and the entering the value chain, all very important routes to bring customer perspective in. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Thank you very much, Professor. Probably as you answer, Mr. Gustavo, and to lead on to that question as well, we also need to realize and factor in another conversation that has been either an obstacle or barrier or an enabler, that is language. We have Chinese markets, Anglophone markets, Lusophone markets all over the world. And the reason why I asked about protectionism is because, for example, there's a lot that could work from the Chinese market in the Anglophone market, but we're not seeing it penetrate or come this side because of the scalability based on the language, most of the operability or the applications. So that is also a challenge. So even as the question is asked, what about the consumer? What does the consumer need? Just help us factor in those two conversations.
Yeah, well, I think that you already put on the table a key factor that are the consumers. But first of all, and after hearing a little bit the speakers, I would like to say that for a company like us, that is a medium-sized company, a small company, or whatever, innovation for a company like us requires to take risks and to take advantage of the challenges, specific challenges. I wouldn't like to forget that. I mean that at the end, what we need is to connect somehow companies with university, with technological research centers. We need to connect them somehow to innovate and to load down to load the risks. Okay, so, and I would like to talk about the consumers because, for example, I will put you a quite clear example. We usually forget consumers when we. So, some years ago, there is an employers association in our region that is doing a great job in connecting companies, in trying to find out synergies between the companies and trying to, at the end, to create an innovative network in our small region where there are about 2,700 industrial companies. Okay, so even if we are small, we have lots of companies, most of them with less than 25 employees. But years ago, they started connecting companies and trying to find out synergies between the companies. Do you know what we forgot? The consumers. We forgot to put the consumers on the equation. And well, I think we took it on time and we started putting on the table also the consumers when we were looking for synergies. And I believe that it has been a great impact to consider them into the equation. So I wanted to answer you because I think that you put on the table a really key factor.
Right. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Let's get a few more questions. We just have a few more minutes to go. Do you have any questions? There's one at the back.
Hello, I'm Syed Asgar from Supply Chain Management Society of Bangladesh. I'm the person and I'm also working for Linde Bangladesh as a head of procurement. Actually, my question is, we see there is less dependency of technology sometime in case of financial innovation. So how do you think that technology can make further contribution in the financial product innovation? Thank you. It is to anybody. The question is open.
Further contribution to finance. Let's get another question. Let's just get a round of questions. Right, there's one there.
Thank you. My question is to the entire panel. The theme of the panel is innovation for trade competitiveness. But what about if we turn this around and we talk about innovation in the context of collaboration, right? Some of you already alluded to that with the education institutions, financial institutions. Can perhaps you elaborate a bit more on your experiences from a collaboration perspective and how that leads to innovation? Also between developing countries amongst themselves, between developed and developing countries, how they can learn from each other. If you have any good cases on innovation and collaboration. Thank you.
Right. Who did you say you wanted that to be answered by?
Whoever wants to share their perspectives in the panel. Nobody in particular.
All right. Let's get another question. Do you have questions from the back? Right. Let's get those two questions. All right. So, yes, maybe the question on less dependence on technology, how technology can further contribute to finance. Let's get that point.
So, just I've just touched upon the financial technology and how we're focused on creating hubs in financial technology. This came as a result of a study on industries in which, so financial technology is the second largest contributor to our GDP in my country, back in Qatar. And we believe that the financial sector, and we believe that this sector in particular hasn't seen new technology or disruption technology that would change the whole sector overall. And the financial sector is structured in a way where regulations are the main driver. And there's always been middlemen or middle companies in the middle between banks, consumers, central banks. And technology has been very successful in reducing the middlemen and reducing the cut for different parts within the value chain. This is why we believe that this sector in particular is going to see huge, and I'm not talking about pivoting, and I'm talking about small changes that would take it from one level to another. We're talking about creating new technologies that will change the way we deal with our personal financing, with finance sector overall. This is why a new innovation within this financial technology is, we believe, is the next wave of changes within technology that will have a disruption in our daily life routine and to the whole sector overall as a finance sector. This is why we're providing the accessibility to the infrastructure, to the ecosystem, alongside the accessibility to the funding, because we believe that the huge changes are going to happen within that sector.
In regards to changes, maybe you could just help us with examples. For instance, right now we have the conversation globally around blockchain technology and Bitcoin. That's number one, but it's not been incorporated everywhere. And the reason why some of the economies say they would like to first give a bit of time before engaging is because once you start engaging with something that is entirely controlled by the internet, there is no stopping it, and regulation becomes a bit of an issue. So just help us understand, for example, such an innovation, how current infrastructure would help regulate or scale it.
So creating sandboxes, right and left. And regulations from the perspective of governments has been very slow in advancement in terms of accessibility to the right technology due to either not understanding this technology or due to the role of the banks. There have been a wave where the banks themselves has been resisting those changes because it's disrupting the way they do business. And they have huge investments either in their core banking systems or IT infrastructure or staff by itself, where this disruption itself is going to cause them to change the way they do business. And we've seen that in the last 2 years, most of the big international banks have created their own CVC funds, corporate venture capitals. And they're mainly focused at financial technology. So creating the right, but totally agree with you, most of the governments, us included, are not yet collaboratively understanding the challenges that this could bring to the way they handle business. This is why I believe that creating those sub-sectors or sub-hubs that would focus on a niche market, not financial technology overall, but for example, rig technology or regulation technology, Islamic financing technology, insurance technology, that would create the right momentum and the right size and the right accessibility to the talent and resources that would create those disruption could actually happen over time, and you will be part of the wave instead of being left behind.
Thank you. Professor Shaolan, you wanted to weigh in?
I want to add a quick point to the fintech. It's about the lower end of the fintech. I went back to China last month, and very impressive is I saw on the very small, in the very small shops, or it's some even small business by the road. They, I don't need to pay by cash. Just, we use the WeChat. And the WeChat Pay can solve everything. And that small business in the formal, old, traditional financial sector, they are excluded. Or even farmers, when I buy an apple or several oranges, I just scan it, and they have these accounts, and therefore they are able to get into the business and into trade. And in the old financial system, they are kind of excluded. Small business, informal sector, or the farmers. So I think this fintech, for the base of the pyramid, for the small firms, really will help trade become more inclusive.
Right. All right. I'm sure that definitely answers that question. We have a question at the back. We have one question there. Maybe as we get the just one sec before, there was that question on collaborative approach that was asked. Even as we get the answer, we'd like to hear, Ms. Indira, your perspective. Let me just give you a bit of context now to add on to that. In East Africa, we had a forum in Rwanda, a banking forum, and banks from all over the world came to Rwanda with the potential of trying to set up. So we spoke with one Swiss bank, and one of the conversations was, why haven't you engaged in setting up a bank in Rwanda or Nairobi? And the bank, he was a portfolio manager, he said, my loan book is bigger than the GDP of your country. Why would I set up in Rwanda, knowing very well I'm just doing it for presence, not for revenue? So he mentioned that if Rwanda and Kenya and Uganda and Burundi can come together, and then we set up a regional bank, that was the only way that they would engage in having presence in East Africa. Otherwise, there's no business for them there. But now getting countries on board, even as we talk about innovation, has been a task. Sri Lanka, for example, they've talked about setting up a roadmap. There are other countries around the region that are already probably 2 steps ahead, or some are 2 steps back. So when you talk about a lot of collaborative approach, there's a lot of compromise that needs to be done to ensure that you're on the same page. And that is not necessarily what countries want. From a Sri Lanka perspective, just help us understand collaboration, country by country.
Now in Sri Lanka, as part of the roadmap, and I must thank the ITC because we are in the process of doing our national export strategy. And one of the support functions that have been identified has been R&D and entrepreneurship. So it has been worked out with all the stakeholders. It's not government driven, because we firmly believe in private and public sector partnership. So it has been that we have identified the needs, and actually what we have done is, because we have limited the frugal resources that we have, so we've had to focus on certain sectors. We have kept the traditional sectors apart, so that we look into, as our target is to get into new markets with new products, because product diversification and market diversification is absolutely essential for Sri Lanka. So therefore we have looked at these focus sectors of wellness tourism, of boat building, of food processing, electrical and electronic sectors. And what we have done is we have looked at, with the private sector, the universities and the research bodies, because I think we have to have a very coordinated effort, because in Sri Lanka universities tend to work alone, the R&D institutions tend to work alone, but if we pool all our resources together, Sri Lanka has the resources, and Sri Lanka has the necessary human capabilities to do it. It's just that it has been fragmented. So if you put all these things together, we are sure with these focus sectors and the necessary R&D and entrepreneurship coming, that we could really be successful. And I would say to all of us who are around here, I think it is a coordinated effort of the universities, of the commercial sector, and the consumers, as very rightly said. If it is a coordinated effort, R&D and innovation can be successful.
You wanted to weigh in. I saw you take the microphone.
Yes, thank you. So very passionate about the question of partnerships, so thank you for the question. It's not a coincidence that my university and others are engaging very strongly in India, in Sri Lanka, in maritime security, in Colombia, as it emerges miraculously from decades of civil war. Why? What gets our researchers out of bed? It's a far greater impact to be had in an asymmetrical relationship, to go into a territory and put science at the service of social innovation alongside the technological innovation. I would like to put social innovation back on the table. It drifts off the table with alarming ease in these conversations, but in the developing economies, social innovation has got to be part of the mix.
Perfect. Thanks for creating perspective. There was one question at the back.
I wanted to ask the question. I hope I still remember my question because there have been a lot of discussion afterwards. My name is Anjum Asad Amin and I'm Additional Secretary in Ministry of Commerce, Pakistan. My question is about business angels. What role business angels can play in supporting innovations and entrepreneurship? And the big question is whether it should be left to the private sector or government should create a kind of institutionalized mechanism to cap it or to promote it. And secondly, innovation in management procedures. We have been talking about innovation technology and financial mechanism. I think management is one part, major part of competitiveness, and by creating better procedures in management, companies can be more competitive. Some comments on that, please. Thank you.
Is there anyone specific you'd like to answer the question?
Anyone can answer.
Right. Perfect. So those are two questions. Let's get two last questions, then we'll wrap up. Do we have any questions from the audience? Final question? Right. We have one here. Anyone else? Right. After that, we are done. Thanks.
Excuse me, my name is Sarah McHugh. I teach in the Technology Management program at Georgetown University. And I also created an online university. It's a master's degree program in quantitative finance. And I just want to say for less than $5 million, we created a global online master's degree program to teach anyone in the world quantitative finance. And it is free to anyone. We have more than 100 countries represented in this program. So, you know, you can innovate in education.
All right. So I guess we're done with the questions. Let's get that probably as a parting shot in terms of business angels and innovation in management procedures. In regards to business angels, we'd like to hear maybe from a government perspective or an affiliate, talk about that. And then in regards to innovation in management procedures, so the two of you on the same, and then innovation in management procedures, and probably that one as well, right?
Regarding angel investment, of course it's very essential and important in terms of accessibility to funding for entrepreneurs. For us in Qatar, we had a small experiment where we've tried gathering the right angels around the same table with entrepreneurs. And initially, it didn't make a lot of sense, and we didn't see any deals happening. We analyzed that further, and we noticed that angels back home didn't want to invest without having the government seal or the government investment co-investing with them at that level. So we've then created some sort of a club, angel investment club. And that also didn't work because we did not invest alongside them. Then we came back again and we've created a small fund, smaller than 10 million Qatari riyals. And currently what we do is that we do provide the initial investment, and we do it in co-investment approach. So if Qatar Development Bank, which is a government-owned entity, and we provide accessibility to learning, development, research, funding through debt, equity investment, market accessibility through local procurement advancement or export support through a TPO and an ECA model. We're kind of an all-in solution for the private sector or SMEs or entrepreneurs. So what we do regarding angel investment currently is that we provide accessibility to funding to angels and entrepreneurs by providing the first ticket from QDB, from the government. Them having those cases going through a robust approach or a robust due diligence by a government institution provides a lot of insurance for those angels to also pitch in and provide that funding. For us, this has been working in the last 8 months, give and take, and it's been taking off. So we have now more than almost 15 tickets supported by angels. Previously, for the last 3 years, we've tried, it didn't work without a government support program, because those angels wanted to have this quality seal of someone reviewing and co-investing with them.
Perfect.
Thank you. We as a bank, we consider business angels as an important element of financing, and we see in Hungary two types of business angels. One is who is experienced and ready to invest in high innovative industries, and the second who participate in starting the business, so in the management, in the operation. And those business angels whom we use, quote unquote, we use, active in the health industry, in the ICT sector and the automotive industry. So they serve on one side as making the first step as private investor, and second, participate in the management of the company.
Got you. Thank you. Thank you for that. The final bit on innovation in management procedures. We'll have the two responses and then we can wrap up.
Yeah. Well, of course, management innovation, it's a must. I mean that it is something that we always have to be working in. In fact, I would say that since some years ago, 6 years ago, the main companies of our region started a real revolution related with the social innovation. I mean that giving the employees more to be, or letting them to be more autonomous, to share the results of the company, to be part of the project, and to make them feel really part of the project. In fact, our company is a family-owned company, but as I say, the family, I'm not part of the family, but I say to the family that the 145 people that we have in the team, they are the real owners of the company. So the social innovation, it is a key also today. It is a key, because to keep the people motivated, it is the real fuel of the innovation.
Professor Chala?
First, I thank you for raising the issue about management innovation, and thanks, Colin, for keep on bringing back social innovation. Yeah, I want to say innovation not only, when we think about it, not only technological innovation, but also all those non-technological innovation, including innovation in management, innovation in organization structure, in marketing practices, and also in social innovation to provide services or products to the societies which are backwards. So when we think about innovation, that's a great variety of innovation, but also when we think about the innovation, they are not only those kind of groundbreaking inventions are innovation, but any firms that they adopt anything that is new to their firm, to their organization, that is also innovation. That is more incremental innovation, diffusionary innovation. So I want to get the message out to the firms. Once you are doing anything new to your firm, to your organization, you are an innovator. You are an innovator. You should be proud of yourself. And also, I want to add a comment to a question, very good question on the role of market and the state. I think that's a big question. Whether we should leave area of innovation to the invisible hands of the market, or we should, let the state play the visible role to play a more dominant role. There are different models in the world. We can see Washington Consensus or the so-called China model, etc. Actually, I have written a book on China's path to innovation. After I've completed my research, actually looking back at China's path, in the past 40 years, I think it has gone to follow an open national innovation system. In this system, there are multiple players and multiple drivers. The state, capital, private capital, and global capital, multinationals, all play a role in that system. And also not only the industry, but also the state and the universities also play a role. So multiple driver, multiple players in that diversified system. So I think The state and the market both have a role to play, just at different stages of the whole innovation chain. At the start of the innovation chain, like for research and development, very risky, very costly, the state should really play a more important role. Especially for small firms, they cannot afford to invest that much in R&D. However, in the later commercialization stage, then much less risky, and we should let the market to play a more prominent role, and the state should withdraw. That's my view. Yeah. Thank you.
Right. Is there one last question?
Thank you. I've just received a question from the live stream. Our colleagues in Geneva who are following us, from Ian Sayers from Geneva. In your countries, what types of financial stimulus have supported innovation?
We could have that as the last remark from everyone as we go on, because I'm imagining we're from different countries actually, all of us, yeah? Right, so we could start with you as a parting shot as well.
Shot. So basically a whole range of different sources, angel investors, of course, international corporates. Rolls-Royce is a very big sponsor of our research, Huawei, but also I do need to add the European Union.
Sri Lanka?
We have the Sri Lankan angel network system that is in place by the private sector, and of course more than the government banks, the commercial banks have come in. And we have collaboration with the ITC, with the World Bank, as well as the EU. So I think all of them have collaborated towards getting the innovation and entrepreneurship roadmap online for Sri Lanka.
Mr. Gustavo, I'm guessing it's Spain?
Yeah, from Spain. Well, we already have sources from the Spanish government, and also from the local government, the deputation, and well, they are just, I would say that finance anyway for innovation for companies like us, it is not so critical. I mean that you first of all have to have a real innovative way of doing the things. So it is secondary. It helps, but it's secondary. Hope that no one in Spain is hearing to me at this moment.
Professor Chawlan?
In China, now China is the world's second largest investor in R&D. Only follows the US. Its R&D expenditure now exceeds the European countries. The main investor, including the state play a very active role in investment in innovation and in research and development, but also the private sector, especially the new wave of the digital technology. The private companies like Alibaba, Tencent, Huawei invest heavily in R&D, and they create their own research institutes, which, you know, and also multinationals now investing in China in R&D too. Yeah.
Perfect. Mr. Al Khalifa, don't be modest.
The government mainly. So we provide many grants and research funds. IOCs, international oil companies, Qatar being huge when it comes to liquefied natural gas, and there are huge investments from international oil companies, and normally they also set up funds for research. At the same time, we've noticed that recently there have been some venture capitals who are setting up funds jointly with the government, and that's focused on research and development, and mainly on commercializing a lot of the research that already have been developed locally.
Mr. Zoltan?
Yes, in Hungary, the Hungarian government and the state-owned institutions, in line with the European Union and OECD regulations, provide non-refundable and refundable grants in the form of guarantee facilities, financing in the form of equity financing and I gave some examples for that. And in case of SMEs, innovative SMEs, and in research and development sector, we reduced the yield expectations, we reduced the minimum invested amount. Via those facilities, we also serve those sectors. And there were one question which has not been answered about some collaboration and best practices. The gentleman over there. We have an example when the university, a municipality, and a private company set up a project together where the private company set up a civil aviation simulation center, and the university for testing purposes, and the university the special medicines, testing special medicines for pilots who after hundreds of hours of flying need a certain treatment. And we, as a Hungarian Exim Bank, with governmental non-refundable grant, finance that civil aviation center, which is practically a private-public partnership of a university, a municipality, and a private company.
Right. Thank you. Just pass the mic back to Mr. Al-Khalifa. I'd like to ask him a question. As we wind up, I've been curious about this, and it's been raised from the investors from the States. What goes through your mind when you see Tesla, for example, setting up the self-driving cars and a large factory to deal with the electric cars? What goes through your mind, especially from your area?
Well, we know that change is coming. And this is why we've been investing heavily in this change, to be part of it as much as possible. You look at the national visions of most of the countries within my region, and there has always been this economic pillar of diversification, how to diversify, what to diversify. You look at, you talk to ministers of trade, ministers of economy, and commonly all GCC countries, and this is the #1 element on their mind, how to diversify. Right. And I have to agree that we haven't been very successful, most of us, currently, to diversify. But all the plans are in place, all the investments are in place. There has been some difficulties, right and left, politically, economically, but we all understand that this is happening, and we all understand that these changes, this technology, this disruptive technology is going to change the way we live. And this is why most of us are trying to be part of the wave, part of the change. But at the same time, this has to make sense to the public. This has to make sense to people back home, investing in what technology and how this will change the way that their life are happening. We know that energy also is required. Maybe these changes are not going to be real in the next 5-10 years. But changes within technology are happening faster than what we think. Most of our governments have been able to diversify in terms of financial diversification by investing through sovereign wealth funds outside of our own economies, which I believe personally is the wrong thing. We need to create core economic changes within our countries in order to change the way, not to fall ill due to our own, being the victim for our own success. Being wealthy nations sometimes makes us uncompetitive or unproductive. And this is the main challenge I see, more than diversification itself. If we're productive, if we're competitive, we will be able always to diversify, we'll be always be able to be there on the international scene. Right. And this is where most of our plans, most of our investments are going towards being more productive, competitive on the international scene, doing smart investments, attracting the right talent, and providing accessibility to the right ecosystem.
Right. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much. I can see the clap there. The main thing that we normally miss with technology is we say technology is the answer, but what was the question, right? So I'll leave you with that bit. I'd like to thank my panelists today. We have Mr. Zoltan on the extreme left, CEO of the Export-Import Bank here in Hungary, Mr. Abdulaziz Al Khalifa, Chief Executive Officer for the Qatar Development Bank, Professor Foucha Olan, Director for Technology and Management Center for Development and a professor at Oxford University, Mr. Gustavo, Managing Director, Pasaban, Ms. Indira Malwata, Chairperson and Chief Executive for the Sri Lanka Export Development Board, and Professor Colin Grant on my left from the University of Southampton. Of course, to all of you who asked the questions, thank you very much. I've been your moderator at George Ndirango, or at George Ndirango. The conversation continues on Twitter, WEDF 17. Thank you very much for your patience and your time.
We had a coffee break scheduled right now, but you all seem so energized that we decided to cancel that and go to the next plenary. No, we're kidding. We have a coffee break until 11 o'clock. Please make sure to be back by then. We'll have the next session titled Moving from Agriculture to Agribusiness. Just one more last logistical detail. There will be shuttle buses leaving to the airport tonight from 6 p.m. and also Friday and Saturday morning. So please make sure to schedule and register at the main registration desk upstairs. So please come back at 11 o'clock. We'll be continuing. Thank you so much.